These three Kennedy half dollars might look ordinary, but one of them could be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Most people don't realize these rare coins are still out there. Stay until the end to see which one could make you rich. Title Coin 1, the 1966 Kennedy half dollar, a silent survivor worth a fortune. Imagine holding a coin that has traveled through 6 decades of history. A coin born during one of America's most emotional chapters. A coin that many people have seen, but very few have truly understood. This is the 1966 Kennedy half dollar. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary 50-cent coin, but sometimes history hides in plain sight. The story begins in the years following the tragic assassination of President John F. Kennedy. The nation was still mourning, and his memory remained deeply alive in the hearts of millions. The Kennedy half dollar had quickly become more than just currency. It became a national tribute that people proudly saved instead of spending. By 1966, demand for these coins was still incredibly high. Americans were collecting them, storing them away, and passing them down through families. Because so many people kept them, very few actually circulated in everyday commerce. One detail often catches people's attention. This coin has no mint mark. That isn't a mistake. For 1965, 1966, and 1967, the U.S., Mint intentionally removed mint marks from circulating coins. Officials believed collectors were hoarding coins based on where they were made, so mint marks were temporarily eliminated in hopes of reducing speculation. That simple decision created one of the most recognizable chapters in American coin history. The design remained elegant and timeless. The front features the portrait of President John F. Kennedy, while the reverse displays the presidential seal with the majestic eagle, olive branch, arrows, and surrounding stars. Simple, powerful, unforgettable. Another fascinating feature lies inside the coin itself. The 1966 Kennedy half dollar still contains 40% silver, making it one of the last circulating U.S. half dollars struck with a significant amount of precious metal before later issues became copper-nickel clad. That silver content alone makes many collectors pay attention whenever one appears. Now look closely at this particular example. The surfaces remain remarkably attractive after decades. A light black layer has naturally formed over parts of the coin, a process collectors often call toning. Rather than being damage, natural toning can sometimes make a coin even more desirable when it develops evenly over many years. Turn the coin over. A small brown spot can be seen on the reverse. To some people, it may look like a flaw. To experienced collectors, it tells part of the coin's long journey through time and storage conditions. Every mark, every shade, every change in color becomes part of the coin's personal history. Condition is everything in coin collecting. 2 coins struck on the same day can have dramatically different values decades later, depending on how well they were preserved. A heavily worn example might be worth only its silver value plus a collector premium. A sharply preserved example with exceptional eye appeal can command much stronger prices. And then there are the extraordinary survivors, coins professionally certified at the very highest mint state grades, especially those with beautiful original surfaces or unusual characteristics, have achieved astonishing auction results. Some rare top-grade examples have reached values around $28,000, but those prices apply only to exceptionally preserved and certified coins, not to typical 1966 Kennedy half dollars. That's why experts always recommend professional grading before assuming a coin is extremely valuable. Many people unknowingly keep old coins inside drawers, albums, or inherited collections without realizing that one outstanding specimen could be far more valuable than another coin that looks almost identical. That's the fascinating part of numismatics. Sometimes the smallest details separate a common collectible from an auction headline. The 1966 Kennedy half dollar represents far more than silver and metal. It represents a nation remembering its president. It represents a period when Americans chose to save history instead of spending it. And decades later, it continues to remind collectors that every coin carries a story beyond its face value. So if you ever find a 1966 Kennedy half dollar without a mint mark, don't judge it too quickly. Examine its condition. Look at its surfaces. Study its luster. Notice its toning, because history doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it fits quietly into the palm of your hand. And occasionally, A single 50-cent coin can become one of the most remarkable treasures in an entire collection. Coin 2. The 1967 Kennedy half dollar, the coin that refused to disappear. Some treasures are discovered by accident. Others spend decades hiding in plain sight. This is the story of the 1967 Kennedy half dollar, a coin created during one of the most unusual periods in American history when silver was disappearing. Collectors were buying everything they could find, and the United States Mint was fighting a battle few people even knew existed. At first glance, this coin doesn't demand attention. It carries no mint mark. Its surface now wears a dark black layer on both the front and reverse, evidence of decades spent quietly aging. To many people, it might look old, even damaged. But experienced collectors often see something completely different. They see time, they see originality, and sometimes they see opportunity. The nation was dealing with economic pressure. Rising year was 1967. America was changing rapidly. The nation was dealing with economic pressure, rising industrial demand for silver, and growing concern that precious metal coins were disappearing from circulation. People had started saving silver coins instead of spending them. Banks struggled to keep enough change available. The government needed a solution. For a short period, the U.S. Mint made an extraordinary decision. Mint marks would disappear, not because they had been forgotten, but because officials believed collectors were chasing coins from specific mints. Removing mint marks was meant to reduce hoarding and encourage coins to return to everyday circulation. That is why every regular 1967 Kennedy half dollar was struck without a mint mark. Far from being an error, it became part of one of the most fascinating chapters in American coin history. The design remained almost unchanged. President John F. Kennedy's portrait stood proudly on the front, while the presidential seal with its powerful eagle filled the reverse. Simple, recognizable, historic. Inside the coin was another important feature. Like the 1965 and 1966 issues, the 1967 Kennedy half dollar still contained 40% silver. It belonged to the final generation of circulating American half dollars that carried significant silver content. Before later issues switched to copper-nickel composition, every surviving example became a small piece of America's silver era. Now look carefully at this particular coin. The black layer covering both sides did not appear overnight. It developed slowly over decades as the silver reacted naturally with its environment. Collectors call this process natural toning. Every pattern is different. No two-toned coins age in exactly the same way. Some develop shades of gold. Others show blue, violet, or deep charcoal colors. This coin tells its own story through dark, even toning that reflects years of quiet links finally taking the time to look at one that has been in the family for decades. The 1967 Kennedy half dollar represents much more than 50 cents. It captures a moment when America was changing its money, protecting its economy, and preserving the memory of a president whose image had become a lasting national symbol. More than half a century later, that story still lives inside every surviving coin. So, if you ever come across a 1967 Kennedy half dollar without a mint mark, don't judge it by its dark color alone. Examine its details. Study its condition. Have it authenticated if it appears exceptional. Because sometimes the most valuable treasures are the ones that spent decades waiting for someone to notice them. Coin 3. The 1985D Kennedy half dollar. The forgotten coin that outsmarted time. Some coins become famous the day they are minted. Others spend decades being ignored, only to surprise the world years later. This is the story of the 1985D Kennedy half dollar, a coin born during a time when most Americans had almost stopped using 50-cent pieces altogether. Unlike its older silver relatives, this coin entered a world where the half dollar was slowly disappearing from everyday life. Stores rarely gave them as change. Cash registers often didn't even have a place for them. Millions of Americans grew up without ever carrying one in their pockets. That quiet disappearance became part of this coin's remarkable journey. The D mint mark tells us this coin was struck at the Denver Mint, one of the busiest coin-producing facilities in the United States. Its design remained faithful to history. President John F. Kennedy's portrait appears on the front, while the presidential seal with its powerful eagle dominates the reverse. Simple, bold, timeless. But this coin's real story isn't about its design. It's about survival. When people stopped using half dollars in everyday life, many coins were stored away almost immediately. Some remained sealed in bankrolls. Others sat untouched inside family collections for decades. Instead of wearing down through daily circulation, many quietly waited in closets, safes, and desk drawers while the world moved on without them. Now look closely at this particular example. A light black layer has gently formed across parts of the surface. On the reverse, a small brown spot adds another chapter to its history. To an untrained eye, these details may seem unimportant. But collectors know that every mark tells a story. Natural toning develops slowly over years as the metal reacts with air, humidity, and storage materials. No machine can perfectly recreate decades of natural aging. Every tone coin becomes unique. It carries its own fingerprint of time. Unlike earlier Kennedy half dollars, the 1985D contains no silver. By the mid-1980s, the United States had fully transitioned to a copper-nickel clad composition for circulating half dollars. That meant collectors could no longer rely on silver content to make these coins valuable. Instead, rarity shifted towards something entirely different. Condition. A coin that escaped scratches, retained its original mint luster, and preserved every tiny design detail could become dramatically more desirable than one that simply spent years in circulation. This changed the way collectors searched for treasures. Instead of looking only for precious metal, they began hunting for perfection. Minute contact marks, surface quality, strike sharpness, original eye appeal. Every tiny detail suddenly mattered. And then there were mint errors. Although uncommon, off-center strikes, double strikes, clipped planchets, and other production mistakes created exciting opportunities for collectors. When combined with exceptional preservation, these unusual pieces could attract intense attention whenever they appeared at auction. Most 1985D Kennedy half dollars remain affordable collectibles. But every once in a while, an extraordinary specimen rises above the rest. A coin preserved in elite condition, professionally certified at the highest mint state grades, or featuring a significant mint error, can achieve astonishing auction prices. Some exceptional examples have reached values around $29,000, but those prices apply only to rare top-tier coins, not to ordinary 1985D half dollars. That is why professional authentication and grading are so important. The difference between an ordinary coin and an auction-worthy rarity can be almost invisible to the naked eye. Sometimes it takes expert examination to reveal what makes one coin truly special. Today, many people inherit jars of old coins from parents or grandparents. Most are never examined carefully. Yet hidden among those collections may be coins with remarkable preservation, unusual characteristics, or fascinating histories waiting to be discovered. The 1985D Kennedy half dollar reminds us that value isn't always created by age alone. Sometimes it is created by rarity, sometimes by condition, sometimes by a story that quietly unfolds over 40 years. What was once ordinary was once overlooked can become highly sought after. What was once ordinary was once overlooked can become highly sought after. What was once ordinary can become extraordinary. So if you ever find a 1985D Kennedy half dollar with its original details, attractive natural toning, and strong overall condition, a forgotten 50-cent coin proves that the greatest treasures aren't always the oldest. Sometimes, they're simply the ones that survive time better than everyone expected. Don't rush to judge its worth. Study it carefully. Compare it with certified examples. If it appears exceptional, consider having it professionally graded. Because history has a way of rewarding patience. And every now and then,